Hi, everyone. It's been a while, and I appreciate your patience as I juggle this podcast with everything else in my life right now. To start, I'd like to let you know about my Patreon, which is really just a way for you to get email updates when a new episode comes out. Signing up is totally free, and it lets us both escape the algorithms that prioritize consistent engagement over my preferred style of podcasting, which is that episodes just release when they're ready and no sooner. So please sign up for that with the first link in the description, and you'll also see another link there to a Google poll. I'm conducting a research project on the Solarpunk community, which will be done through interviews. That means I need subjects, and I'd like to cast a really wide net. So please fill out the survey if you're at all interested in participating in this research, and pass the link along to anyone you think might be interested. The only requirement really is that you consider yourself a Solarpunk in some way. And the goal is to learn more about who we are as a community and also what Solarpunk means to the world. Which brings me to this episode's subject. Solarpunk might seem impossible in the year 2026. After a whirlwind few years of fascism and neoliberalism taking turns carving away at us, the future ahead seems bleak. The climate crisis continues to accelerate alongside these political crises, and even the most modest approaches to tackling these issues are being suppressed and clawed back. There is progress happening in some places that is legitimately worthy of celebrating, but there are also places like here in the US, which seem to be backsliding in every way possible. In times like these, you can understand why Solarpunk's critics write us off as unrealistic wishful thinking. But that's not what I've seen happen in the future-oriented communities around me. The past few years have galvanized a lot of activism and interest in exploring the art and theory of possible alternatives. In August last year, I attended Worldcon, the World Science Fiction Convention in Seattle. Solarpunk is a new genre on the scene, but the excitement around it really blew me away. Even my early morning Wednesday panel on hopeful futures was packed to the point that people were just sitting on the floor. Some had just heard the word Solarpunk for the first time and made it a point to attend everything they could for the rest of the convention on Solarpunk as a topic. I saw increasingly familiar faces from a wide range of backgrounds, all really eager to discuss what hopeful futures mean to us right now. People care about speculative fiction because they care about the future. That explains how easily discussions of the fiction turned into discussions of how to make our real world better. Literary works and real-world politics were in constant dialectic, building and transforming one another. No one in these conversations ever stopped to suggest that we should separate fiction from our desires for the future. Maybe there's always interest in hopeful futures no matter what the political situation is. But I think the energy around Solarpunk is actually created by resistance, by people having a desire to do things differently when they can see that a change needs to be made. So here's the case for Solarpunk in 2026 and beyond. In his essay, The Political Dimensions of Solarpunk 10 Years Later, Andrew Dana Hudson looks back on the last decade of development and proliferation of Solarpunk. From its humble beginnings in a blog post, the movement has grown and diversified a lot, and it's worth reflecting on how it's changed as the world around us has also changed. Hudson says that Solarpunk initially came about in an era with no future, which is to say, no sense that the future could be any different, the neoliberal idea of the end of history. But now, in the 2020s, we've moved from an era with no political future to one that has a very dark future, an accelerating climate crisis and an accompanying authoritarian turn. Fascism is on the rise in my part of the world, as it has been in many other places. I've heard it called a global resurgence. People theorize that as the cracks in the neoliberal order start to show, fascism looks like an appealing alternative. It's appealing because of the way it mythologizes itself, the way it uses memes and aesthetics to spread widely, rather than limiting itself to any particular party line, aside from, like, a minimum program of racial hierarchy and anti-democracy. It's managed to make itself look cool, to disaffected youth and to political hopefuls looking for an edge, in addition to the people who genuinely believe and advance its core theories. This global increase in appeal and popularization is really concerning, especially as it comes at a time when the climate crisis is kicking up a notch. The status quo established by fossil-fueled neoliberal policies is untenable, and people don't see a future in it. So they're turning to alternative visions of the future, and to an increasing number of people, fascism seems like a way forward, whether or not they realize their complicity. Fascism has its own vision of the future, and its own terrifying ways of addressing issues like climate and economic inequality. For some, it's the racist utopia they've always wanted. But for many more, they will let it happen, piece by piece, since it seems like the only way forward in a world that's crumbling apart. We can't let this look like the way forward. We need a counter-narrative, and it needs to be built on existing cultural energy and imagination. I think solarpunk is that cultural energy. So not everyone has heard the term, and fewer still could offer a definition or explain what the features of a solarpunk society would be. But somehow in a broader sense, solarpunk is a feeling that resonates across borders, generations, and political affiliations. When you describe a solarpunk future to someone, whether or not they're familiar with the word, it does speak to desires they have for the future. We want to live in a healthier world, where we can encounter and celebrate nature in our everyday lives. We want to live meaningful lives doing meaningful work in communities that support and love each other. We want clean air, water, and food. We want the comforts of technology and the benefits of advanced science and medicine. But we want them working in our best interests, rather than those of capitalists, rent seekers, and oppressive regimes. Solarpunk appeals massively to our desires for the future. It also emphasizes as a theme the work it takes to get to that future. All this without being owned or controlled by anyone, which allows it to move freely across the web and in real life as a meme and an aesthetic with broad cultural reach. It has the mythological momentum that we need. We need solarpunk to be the cool option for disaffected youth, or as a rallying cry for movements and change makers. It speaks to the everyday lives of the many without being owned or controlled by a few. I see solarpunk as an image of the future with the cultural reach we need to stand as an alternative to the dystopias we're facing. But solarpunk is more than existing cultural energy. I think it has the potential to be a guiding light, a way of framing the horizon we're looking towards. Here's why I like solarpunk above other aesthetics. First, we need a positive vision. Positive not in an emotional sense, but in a sense of desirable objects being present. You can think of negativity as our way of resisting and opposing the things we don't like in the world. Negative modes of engaging with capitalism, patriarchy, colonialism, etc. look like critique or protest, and more direct forms of resistance. It's the tearing up of pavement that's necessary to make room for new soil and seeds. Positivity, then, would be what blooms afterwards. It's the new life we want to bring into the future. The healthier, more ethical systems we'll build in place of the old. Solarpunk is full of these ideas, many of them rooted in methods and traditions that already exist in the present. It's a biodiverse garden of positive examples of how we might do things better. This positivity is an essential resource for movements. It informs our critiques, provides moments of pleasure and relief, and keeps our eyes on the horizon of possibility that we're fighting for. Secondly, today, survival itself is a utopian effort. Since 1947, the doomsday clock has tracked how close we are to annihilating ourselves. From the invention and proliferation of nuclear weapons to the accelerating climate crisis today, our continued existence on this planet is not guaranteed. So when our survival itself is in question, what room is there for the luxury of utopian thinking? Well, in her book, Utopia in the Age of Survival, S.D. Christoska reconciles the contradiction between our imagining of utopia and our need to focus on everyday survival. Utopian thinking shouldn't be a luxury, shouldn't be disembodied or removed from our everyday life. In fact, it's out of our everyday struggles and worries that desires for utopia are born. In survival mode, desire is not reduced. In fact, it's felt more strongly. Now, more than ever, we desire a world where our basic needs can be met, a world sustainable enough to do the same for future generations. Currently, that world does not exist, and it seems unlikely to come about without serious intervention. In other words, it's a utopia. Krostoska writes, "Never has there been greater consensus about what is wrong with the world, what is rotten and missing in it. Never, then, have there existed more fertile conditions for a universal desire for utopia." Finally, solarpunk as a genre has many of the features of effective climate messaging. From research in the social sciences, we know that when it comes to motivating people to take action, some ways of talking about the climate crisis are more effective than others. Whether fiction or nonfiction, stories that center efficacy, the sense that we have control over the climate crisis and we can do something about it, are the most effective at inspiring people to take action. Vivid depictions and perspectives, as well as stories of people in similar social roles to our own, help us believe in our own unique capabilities. And the best messaging focuses on action, not just an outline of the problem at hand, but the specific ways people are addressing it. Even hope can be discussed in more or less effective ways. Survey data shows that people who place their hope in abstract ideas of science and technology, essentially some sort of techno-fix to the climate crisis, are less likely to be involved in climate action themselves. Whereas those who place their hope in other people, in our ability to organize and act together, those people are most likely to be involved. This is what researchers call constructive hope. Along with efficacy, it's key to successful messaging, and it's something that solarpunk stories have in abundance. As a side note, this was the focus of my research presentation for Worldcon last year, and the description for this episode will have links to citations, as well as more details. I think it's an exciting area for further research, so if you're a scholar or communicator listening to this, I would really encourage you to take a look. I know hope is hard to come by right now. It's certainly something I'm struggling with myself, but solarpunk works and the community around them are giving me a lot of strength. That's why I'd argue, in 2026, solarpunk is the most compelling cultural energy for us to utilize, and it can carry our movements far. It's the sun that will power our solar panels. Now is the time for more solarpunk art, more discussions of positive climate futures, more fun and more color in the work we're doing on climate solutions. Solarpunk actually speaks to and engages with our desires, more so than when we try to be, quote-unquote, realistic about things by asking for less. Narrowing our scope and our vision doesn't strengthen our approach, it weakens it. We need a comprehensive, holistic, positive vision of the future. We have to be able to imagine and unfold a whole world out of it. That's what carries cultural momentum and takes on a life of its own. That's what gets people excited and gives them room to innovate. It's a core of essential values without being restrictive or dogmatic. Not a blueprint, but an ethos for how to build. Solarpunk had its start on a blog over 10 years ago. It's had time to spread and develop in bright minds across disciplines, and in movements working towards a variety of aims. The seeds have been planted everywhere. Now is the time to nurture them, to let these ideas and projects bloom and become visible. Visibility is key. So too is crossbreeding, or hybridization, evolution, exchanging ideas and productive debates to keep our work up to date with rapidly changing times. Now is also the time to deepen roots, raise trunks, and grow strong together. Practice security, and keep the underground parts of the network nourished. We need to commit to each other's well-being and to our values, even when they're unpopular. Cultural work is slow, but it's essential. If we can hold to our vision of the way forward, then when the storm clears, it is our garden that will bloom. Solarpunk Now is written, hosted, and produced by me, Luca Dowell. The Solarpunk theme song is by Red Keener, with additional music by Gabriel Rivas. You can follow me online at Instagram or Mastodon, or visit solarpunkcast.net for show notes and to support the show with a donation. Please also sign up for the Patreon to get email updates when a new episode releases. And remember, the realization of any vision requires action. I strongly encourage you to get involved with organizations whose goals align with the brighter future you want to see. Analysis is important, but we have to back it up with practice. Keep dreaming big, and keep up the good work.